What should we say about the Philadelphia Eagles, who are sitting at 3-0, and everyone in the world is unimpressed?
Yeah, I would say for him, what he really means is you don't want to be playing your best ball right now. You want to be playing your best ball at the end of the season when it truly matters. But the fact that they're winning, they're 3-0, and they're not playing their best in the passing game makes them, to me, feel more dangerous because their offensive line is dominating. They've run for 200-plus yards in back-to-back weeks, and their defense looks like they're smothering people out there. So I think for him, he's basically saying, listen, we want to be great in January and February. Right now, we're winning, and that's all that matters.
But you don't have to choose.
You
You can be great at both. But, I mean, they're getting away and winning games. I think what's impressive is that they are one of the toughest teams and one of the more talented teams in football. So it's not always going to be perfect, but Jalen Hurts makes big plays that are outside of structure. That's impressive.
Remember, the big questions about the Eagles were about the new coordinators, right? It's a first-time play caller on offense and Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator. So it looks to me like a quarterback and a coordinator kind of getting used to each other. And I think the fact that you can win in the meantime, while that's going, a lot of teams would struggle out of the gate with that exact situation. They are 3-0 in spite of it.
Let me make Jeff Saturday mad. Are they winning ugly right now, Jeff?
No, it's a thing of beauty because the Eagles are a nightmare to play. And let me tell you why. In the last two games that it's been ugly for everybody else, they have rushed for 31 first downs. You know how many the opposing team has rushed for?
How many, Jeff?
1.
Oh, wow.
So when you talk about complete dominance, inside, he's like, oh, yeah, 900 yards in the last 2 weeks. We're not really where we should be. And y'all are all complaining. You know why? Because they ain't throwing for, or they're scoring 70. What they are doing is winning games and beating people up violently. They are bullies. I talked about it last week when we talked about the Cowboys. This is the bully of the NFC. And when you talk about why they're going to be good in January, in February, we can include Jalen Hurts. It is the offense and defensive lines. These two are the best in the league, and it will show week after week because it does travel. It ain't just going to be spotty. It travels. You got to like where they are. I like where they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's one thing that you could have stable right now, it's offensive line play. You would like that. You can build a bunch of stuff off of that. You can run complicated schemes and route combinations and run tricky running plays as long as you can get protection and you can get pushed. And they're getting that. And the defensive line, I think, is almost scarier. Actually, let me be honest. Jalen Carter is a monster. Oh,
yes,
my
sir.
gosh. He's
Yes, sir.
killing
He
double
is.
teams, punching people in the ribs.
Yeah.
It's out of control, and anybody who passed on him should be ashamed.
Yeah, but, Jeff, they are winning ugly. They're winning ugly. It might be pretty to an offensive lineman, but it's still ugly. And what I would say is that for them to win the Super Bowl, which is the next step for them, their passing game is going to have to come along. The one thing they did get going was they got A.J. Brown involved early and often, but Jalen Hurts right now isn't seeing it quite as good as he was last season, and he has more games to get that going. But when you have a dominant offensive line and defensive line like they do, being 3-0 is not a problem.
Half the team was sick, including Jalen Hurts, right? He was dealing with something with his, I guess, his stomach before the game. Look, it is ugly. Like the fact that I know you're an offensive line.
900 yards is terrible. I can't imagine. I didn't get 900 yards in 5 weeks. He got 2 weeks, and they're complaining about it.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, 3-0 is 3-0, right?
Yeah.
Like on golf, they say they don't ask how, it's how many, right? Like they're winning the games. There is no reason for us to think they cannot get the passing game going because we saw it last year, and it's the same guys. So I think that if you're the Eagles, you're feeling fantastic right now.
So they're 3-0, and they will sit with 6 games remaining until their bye. Take a quick look. Their bye is week 10. They got a couple of huge games in this stretch, including the Dolphins and Cowboys. Both those games will be at home. Obviously, they'll be at Dallas later in the year. And then the gauntlet begins after their bye. They will play Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas again, and Seattle. So to the point Nick Sirianni was making, maybe they need to be at their best when they start playing against the best. Everyone is underwhelmed with the way they're playing, and yet they're 3-0. What do you say about that?
I'm not underwhelmed at all.
Tell us how you feel.
O-line, D-line domination. It wins football games. It might not be quarterbacks throwing for 70. Everybody gets a score. Everybody's the fastest in the game, whatever all that is. What you do know is you're going to win a lot of games this way. I talked about it last week. This is a bully ball football team, and they show it week after week. And by the way, 470 yards this week, 430 yards. Is that bad? I mean, that's ugly. That's what we're calling ugly. Every offensive coordinator would take it every week, irrespective if they are hot quite yet. They are winning games and they are beating teams up.
Yes, but to your point, they're not getting yards. They're just not being efficient in the passing game. And it's not just that the efficiency, it's the turnovers as well. Yeah. They're like one of the worst teams in the league when it comes to plays over 10 yards in the passing game. So when you listen to Sirianni talk, and he talks about the yards that they got, but they're not playing that well, they have different goals, right? Last year they played in the Super Bowl. They're not just trying to merely win games. They're trying to put together a season that they know makes them confident going into the playoffs that they can win the game and win the Super Bowl. And that's only going to happen if they get more efficient in the passing game. But right now, the way they're winning, there is nothing wrong with that. Dominate up front, run for 200 yards back-to-back weeks. I think you have a stat. Go ahead and share that stat about how many rushing yards that they had before contact.
343 out of 460, 343 before contact. That means the dude's not getting touched. 343 yards a game without a dude getting touched. And that's straight balling.
And when you have a running back with the last name Swift, he can get Swifty on you.
So, I mean, that's really the question here. Because Jalen Hurts was what made everyone excited about the Eagles last year. Yes, they've got the dominant play on the offensive and defensive line, and they may have the defensive rookie of the year on their defensive line now in Jalen Carter. But we watch this kid, Jalen Hurts, just going like this, and I think we want to see that again. We want to see him now. He's the best player in the world, and that's what we're not seeing.
Yeah, we're not seeing it, but we are seeing that he still has that ability. I think that's what you want and what we talk about from a lot of quarterbacks, that extra something is when the play breaks down, when nobody's open. It's that play right there.
Correct.
He's able to do stuff like that. It gives you confidence in what your team's going to be able to do, because sometimes it's not going to work out. Sometimes you got to sit in the pocket, take a hit, and throw it just barely over the outstretched fingers of the defender for a bomb touchdown. So I'm not worried about them in the long run.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is. And the fact is, the Eagles are not built with the goal of entertaining us in September, right? Like that's the whole. You talk about roster building and Howie Roseman and what he does, right? Like, yes, it's great that they found that quarterback in the second round and developed him. Outstanding. Big move to get A.J. Brown, aggressive move in the draft. You know, even get DeAndre Swift during the draft when he becomes available. But the reason they've stayed good is because Howie Roseman has consistently maintained depth and quality on the offensive and defensive lines. It is the highest priority they have as roster builders. You can see what it does. Nobody in the league has a good offensive line. Yeah. What an advantage that is.
I mean, he said it all.
Yeah, Jeff,
to be repeated.
Jeff is so happy he doesn't even know what to say.
Well, Bros did some work. That's what I'm talking about.
But what happens when the opposing team is giving you that smoke as well and is forcing you, Dak Prescott, now you have to elevate your game. That's what didn't happen in this game, particularly in the red zone.
Yep.
Dak Prescott was not able to elevate his game. That, to me, is a sign. Like, are you going to be able to elevate your game when teams are playing blow for blow with the Dallas Cowboys?
A really good point that he makes.
I mean, he's not wrong. Yeah, they can't win. They go 1 for 5 in the red zone. I think blaming it on Dak is the way that we like to go all the time. Yep. There weren't a lot of open receivers in that situation. They were blitzing him, and he wasn't getting the protection he anticipated because of injuries. This is one of the plays that I saw in the red zone where it's a boot. You think you're going to get play action, you're going to get people wide open. He's rolling, looking for somebody. What do you expect someone to do in this situation? So the interception that he threw, you can't blame anybody other than Dak for that. But this right here, look, they're just blanketed. It's DBs everywhere and linebackers everywhere.
He's got to raise the level of everyone around him.
How do you raise that? I don't know. I don't know how you raise that play.
But what is it? So that was the big deal.
Yes.
Is that the Cowboys in the red zone, and Rex brought it up yesterday, that the one thing that they seem to have taken out of Dak's game is his running with the ball, which obviously he did very effectively in college and early in his NFL career. And it seems since he got hurt, he does a good deal less of that. And Rex was suggesting they need to add that to the red zone offense for Dallas to get going.
I mean, what your job when you pay a quarterback a lot of money is to protect him, right? So if Dak's reluctant to use his legs in those situations and they don't want to do, really organized quarterback runs out there for him, I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is it felt like 2 or 3 years, everyone at this network and around the world was talking about Zeke being washed.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is the Dallas Cowboys miss Zeke right now. Right, last year he was 17 for 21 on 3rd and 4th down conversions, short yardage situations. In the red zone, when you have a hammer like Ezekiel Elliott, it can take a lot of pressure off of the quarterback. That's not the only thing that they miss. These guys have the personnel to go out and get guys open. We're talking about Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. These guys aren't slouches, but what they are missing is a tight end in the red zone. They need that body presence to give them that mismatch, and the only guy out there right now that I feel like they could go get would be to go trade for Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. Now, I don't know what they're going to have to give up to get him. I don't know what they're going to have to give up to get him, but that would give them that tight end, that Jason Witten type that they're missing right now to create those mismatches in the red zone.
Danny, what do you think?
Look, right, they lose Dalton Schultz in free agency. They let Zeke go. I think they're probably missing Zeke in pass protection, too, especially in a day when you have 3 backup offensive linemen. 2 of them are making their first NFL start. So, yeah, they had a bad game.
Yep.
They were, I believe Mike McCarthy was out-schemed by Jonathan Gannon, who was with the Eagles and played the Cowboys twice a year and may just know how to do it. But the criticism of Dak, I think, it's warranted until we see him do it, right? And I'm not saying it's necessarily his fault, but the fact of the matter is, like, here's the game where the rest of the team's not playing well. You, the quarterback, overcome it. That is a critique of his that has held up because he hasn't done anything to knock it down.
Criticism of Dak is fair, but Dak has proven himself as an above-average, very good quarterback in football. The criticism, the only thing that he needs to overcome is that postseason stuff. There's nothing that Dak can do in the regular season that's going to change the way anybody feels about him. Like, he had a bad game. Lots of quarterbacks have bad games. They lose in these situations. It happens. No one's going undefeated.
One thing he could do in the regular season is throw fewer interceptions. I mean, that was a bad interception.
That was at the end of the game.
And here's an opportunity to score, and you throw a bad interception. That is what I'm saying is he's not helping himself.
Agreed. He's not.
If we're going to talk about him like this,
Why is it ugly? So we talked about the Cowboys looking like the best team in football. Your old Colts team, your team was built to get out in front with Peyton Manning and then get those Dwight Freeney and those guys rushing the quarterback.
Absolutely.
And if you're not playing from in front, then all of a sudden it doesn't look the same.
Yeah, you get exposed, right? I mean, and you think about the first half. They ran the Cardinals ran 16 times for 182, over 11 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. Like, they exploited this defense. They're up 21-9 or 21-10 in the first half, whatever it was. They were putting it to the Dallas Cowboys defense, and I think the response from the Cowboys, that's what's lacking, right? Is all of a sudden you're like, hey man, we can't come back from this type. But they are built to play with a lead. That's what their defense is. They'll have to figure out how do we slow the run game down. I think this is an anomaly, right? I think they played poorly on defense. I think they thought they were going to walk in and beat the brakes off this team. All of a sudden they get into this fight, and everybody's like, man, looking for somebody to make a play. Nobody made one, right? It happens, but I think you go back and reset. I don't think you just, wash your hands of the Cowboys. This is a good football team. They play bad.
No one's washing anything, but in the next 2 weeks, they play New England and San Francisco.
Yeah.
Those are 2 teams that can run it and 2 teams that are going to beat you up. They want to get into a fight, too.
Yeah.
The Cowboys aren't ready for that in the next couple of weeks. We could be having a lot of conversations. You got pushed around a little bit. Your defense looked like it missed Trayvon Diggs and all that stuff. That's when you need your quarterback to say, I got you guys. Get on my back. Yeah. Dak didn't do it.
I agree. He didn't do it. But, we act like Dak hasn't done it in the past. He does it plenty of times in the regular season. He's done it in the postseason. What we're looking for Dak to do is to get them to a championship game. I think the red zone efficiency was the problem. Part of that is on Dak. Part of it's on the play calling and the play design, as it always is. This is a play in the red zone that we're looking at, and you expect to get him out on the pocket, use his athleticism, move the defense. Who's he supposed to throw it to? There's nothing there.
Make a play, Dak. Make a play.
Elevate the team. How do you elevate the team in a moment like that? And that's a cherry-picked play, but a lot of the plays down there look a lot like that. So
the next play, they get sacked, right?
Yes, you can expect different things or have higher expectations of the quarterback, but we got to be fair to what we expect from this particular quarterback.
What did they miss in the red zone? Because that was really the factor in this week's game. They had a bunch of red zone chances. They got almost nothing to show for it. Why?
Everyone's going to say it's because Kellen Moore's not calling plays anymore, but that's not the point. The fact of the matter is they missed Ezekiel Elliott, right? Everyone said he was washed, but for him, in short yardage situations and near the goal line, he was 17 for 21 on conversions last year on 3rd and 4th down. For them, on 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1. So for me, it's like everyone needs to apologize to Zeke, right? Tony Pollard is a great running back, but he's not a finisher like Zeke was in the red zone. And then the other part of it is they have the personnel to make it work. Right? They've got Gallup, they've got CeeDee Lamb, they've got Brandon Cooks, but they don't have the tight end that really can be the security blanket for a quarterback. We all know that. But there's a guy out there, plays for the Atlanta Falcons, that they could possibly go get, who they're not using right now, in Kyle Pitts. That would give them that mismatch in the red zone that I think that they're missing. And right now, they're 3 for 11 in the red zone when it comes to converting on touchdowns over the past 2 weeks. That is not good efficiency. Yeah. So even though they move the ball, they're not scoring.
I'm old enough to remember when Kyle Pitts was going to revolutionize the NFL. When he came in, he was going to be a weapon like we had never seen. He was the first non-quarterback taken in that draft after Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. And he is not being used much in Atlanta. They live to run the football. The Cowboys made an aggressive trade a few years ago for Amari Cooper, and it made a difference during this season. Does that feel like an option?
I mean, I think if they get to that point, look, they had a bad game. Like, it is a bad, like, at some point this year, the Eagles will play a bad game, right? And somebody might get them, right? Like that happens. So if it becomes a trend. Now, talk about red zone offense. I believe through 3 weeks, there's only 3 teams in the league that have a lower red zone touchdown percentage than the Cowboys. They're going to have to do something to fix it. And if that becomes it, if it's available, absolutely. They're not out there looking to make that aggressive move. And they think they have the personnel to do it. I know Jeff doesn't think this is a big deal. They were down 3 offensive linemen in this game, right? I think
2 going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, right. 2 that are going to the Hall of Fame. Yeah, so look, it was a bad. Jonathan Gannon, the Cardinals coach, was designing defenses to stop the Cowboys with the Eagles for years. I mean, I think we can give them one bad game.
Let's not let the defense off the hook.
Thank you.
Like, can we not let, this was a defense we all just talked about was revolutionizing football for the last 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, they get a $187 and 2 touchdowns in the first half. They're averaging 11. The Cardinals rushed had 11.4 yards per carry in the first half. Like, that's unacceptable. So there is some complementary football that has to be played. We can always lay at the foot of the quarterback, but from the defensive side, they have to play better as well to keep this team in it. And again, the red zone, they got to be better. But this was a complete failure for the team. They played poorly. It happens. I think it's an anomaly.
So then let's change the topic. Let's get out of the small picture and let's go to the big picture. It feels like there were 3 teams in the NFC that have separated themselves. And that, we'll see what Green Bay is. We'll see what Atlanta is and a few of these others. But at the end of the day, San Francisco, Philadelphia, and Dallas look like they're going to be the 3 teams to beat in the NFC. 2 of them are the physical, punch-you-in-the-mouth style. And then you got the Cowboys, who are based on speed and all that kind of stuff. Does that work, and do they need to make some kind of move to elevate themselves beyond those 2 teams?
I don't think they need to make some type of move.
Kyle Pitts, make it happen.
I wouldn't say no to Kyle Pitts if he was available, but you're going to have to give up something significant to make that happen. So I think you're definitely right. They aren't as physically opposing as those other teams, but that doesn't mean that you can't win. And so they're trade-offs. You're not going to both be a run-stuffing defense and also a great pass-rushing defense. So, I think they made the smart trade-off for modern football. I would like to have an offense that gets me a lead and then a pass rush that ends the game because they know that on 3rd down, in 5 or 6, that you have to do that 4 or 5 times. Sooner or later, we're going to kill your drive or cause a fumble. So, I don't hate the way this team is built. They had 1 game. It was bad against a bad opponent. Let's move on and stop hyperventilating.
There's a pretty big difference between being an elite run defense and giving up 222 rushing yards to the Cardinals.
Yes.
I think there's some middle ground where they could settle.
But I don't think that the Cowboys are built in a finesse way. I've said this before, but going into this season and what we saw the first couple games, this isn't Dak's team anymore. It's the Cowboys' defense's team. And when they give up 222 rushing yards and they allow Josh Dobbs to have a 43-yard run on them, there's a problem there. So I think all 3 teams are actually built the same way. The running game was carrying the Cowboys the first couple weeks. It wasn't Dak's arm that was winning them games. So it was a bad game. But all of these teams are built the exact same way, and it's the blueprint to beat any of them. And run the football against them to neutralize their pass rush.
Weren't bad. I mean, their offense, they rushed for almost 200. I mean, it wasn't like they just played this soft. Zone. It's red zone. Yeah, 100%.
It could have been a lot worse. Quite candidly, they did not have by any means the worst day on Sunday.